et du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire.
Joining us now is Katie Benner, Justice Department reporter with the New York Times. She and three of her colleagues at the Times broke this story tonight. Ms. Benner, thank you so much for talking us through this. Congratulations on this scoop.
Thanks for having me.
I am not asking you to comment on your sources, and I do not want to ask you to associate yourself with what I just said in terms of SDNY squawking. You are not describing your sources. I don't have any inside information about it. I want to make that clear. But beyond that, is there anything that I just described that missed the point or got any of this wrong, or is that the basic plot that you and your colleagues have been able to describe here?
Yeah, I think that you said a lot. You represented a lot of the story really well. One point I think to add is that Bill Barr believes truly that as the Attorney General, he does have the right to have strict oversight over the Southern District. The Southern District is independent not because it is allowed to be by something in the U.S. Attorney's Manual or by statute, but simply because of tradition. And as you can imagine, somebody who wants to strongly control everything that happens in the department, for him, the Southern District has been particularly a thorn in his side, and U.S. Attorney Berman particularly a target.
In terms of what Mr. Barr believes he should be controlling, though, does it seem to be out of proportion the way that Attorney General Barr has personally gotten himself involved in cases that touch on the president's personal political and business interests compared to other types of cases that don't relate to the president, whether at the Southern District of New York or in other U.S. attorneys' offices around the country. It certainly seems like an unusual amount of personal intervention, all of which seems to go toward lenience for the president's associates.
Sure. Now, before I address that, first, I want to note that Attorney General Barr did speak on this point to NPR today. So in his own words, he believes that these accusations are essentially a conspiracy theory whipped up usually by the media or by people who just do not trust the Justice Department law and order. But I want to make sure that I put in his defense before I also say, when you step back and you look at this pattern of behavior, it is one of the reasons why people suspect that he is intervening to protect the president. Yes, he is a heavy-handed attorney general, and he is a micromanager, to say the least. So it's not surprising per se that he would want to know what's going on in really, really sensitive matters and want to manage them. That said, of course, between the president's public statements and his tweets, the way that he regards Attorney General Barr, the fact that he's all but called him his fixer or his guy on the inside, I mean, he sort of danced around that theme. Of course, people will say this is part of a pattern and practice on the part of the Attorney General to make sure that he has his ear to the ground for anything that could hurt the president.
You and your colleagues at the end of this piece tonight describe the Attorney General also taking a very active role in what I colloquially called the Lev and Igor case, this case related to Rudy Giuliani's associates and their potentially or allegedly having directed hundreds of thousands of dollars in illegal contributions to Republican campaigns and to a super PAC supporting the president's reelection effort. The delay of their case so that it's now going to happen, their trial is going to happen after the election, may certainly be explained just by the pandemic, just by the fact that COVID has delayed all trials and has delayed a lot of different proceedings. But I do wonder, and I just have to ask if your reporting indicates anything about whether Attorney General Barr is trying to shape the way that prosecution goes forward. In December, federal prosecutors at SDNY said in open court that a superseding indictment is likely in that case, one that a lot of people expected to mean Rudy Giuliani. That's very close to the president's interest. Is there any sense that that's the type of interest, that part of the case is what Barr is interested in or working on?
Sure. I'll take your question in a couple of parts. One, on the timing, the delay really was, I believe, because all of the courts were shut down due to COVID. It was hard to get a grand jury. There were no juries, and there was not a lot of activity happening in the courts. So unless something was essential, like life or death, or a criminal matter that was of the utmost importance, national security matters mostly, you were not going to see any action happen in the courts. So that is truly a big reason for why this has been delayed. Now, interestingly, again, this gets to the relationship between Attorney General Barr and the Southern District. Another part of your question, which was, is he very closely scrutinizing this matter? He is. Now, one reason is because we have Justice Department policy saying anything that is going to be a matter of public interest, anything that's going to make the news, anything that pertains to a public figure, an important public figure in government, like the president, every prosecutorial step has to be run by the Deputy Attorney General's office and the Attorney General's office. And I am told that that is exactly what's happening in this matter. Now, of course, we also know that there are people within the Southern District of New York who do not trust Mr. Barr's motives, thanks to these past encounters with him, not just on the Michael Cohen case, but also on Hawk Bank and others. So this, it just speaks again to this very, very broken relationship between the Southern District and Main Justice, and this bigger fear that the Attorney General is able to use existing rules for the president's ends.
Yeah, existing rules, exactly. And being able to put in context his behavior toward things that affect the president versus his behavior toward run-of-the-mill things in the Justice Department, I feel like is that's where the story is becoming very clear.
It is Friday, the 26th of June of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all night hawks in the Diner of Life. Well, the French 77s are virtually poured for your virtual imbibing pleasure, so please take care. Even in the virtual world, you never know the effects of a French 77 until it has affected you. Well, speaking of being affected, Donald Trump and his administration in the dead of night wanted, and probably still do, the Supreme Court to make an emergency ruling to take away the ACA completely in the middle of a pandemic. Right in the middle. I don't think it's actually in the middle. Maybe that's what they're thinking. It's certainly not at the end of the pandemic. We are at the beginning of this pandemic still. And Donald Trump wants to take our health care away right before the election. He thinks that that's a winning strategy. Well, I guess so. He's been going out there saying, hey, if we keep testing, people will get the virus, because every time they test, there's more people who have the virus. Maybe if we stop testing, maybe it's the testing that's causing the virus. So they've decided to defund, a couple of dozen testing sites? While a pandemic is raging? Okay, sounds like a winning strategy. Maybe he thinks that the only ones left will be his people. He has been on the record, apparently, saying that anyone who dies from coronavirus is a loser. Well, I guess by definition, if you're dead, that means that you've lost. Is that what it is, Donnie? That's rather heartless and cruel, but you would come to expect that from this guy. And the deplorables that keep voting him in and protecting him and defending him, just like the Jim Jones cultists they are. And it is manifested out there on social media. He's got his brown shirt foot soldiers doing the job. They don't actually need an order. They know what to do. And that's just F you up. That's it. So I continue with this really weird suspension at Facebook. I'm pretty sure I know the actual human in a group who reported me because of last week or maybe the week before. There was a cryptic little reply or comment to something that I had made mention of, where this particular person says, I think it's time to put you on mute. Young person, too, because I'm just an old fuck. I need to get out of the way. I don't know how to think new thoughts. And I keep reminding them, or at least trying to tell them, that their ideas about Soros being the evil in the world, the puppet master, that's not new thinking. They were talking about Soros like that even before we divested from South Africa, and then these same idiots who say Soros is the evil in the world had no idea what divestment from South Africa meant. But they know all about Soros and how he's a puppet master. He was on the Nazi side during the Holocaust. He's not a real Jew. As defined by non-Jewish people, by the way. So they apparently, in their small numbers but caustic effect, have eroded the trust in this country to the point where I can put up a GIF. Or is it a GIF? See, that's another thing. That's what divides us. It's a GIF, not a GIF. I don't care what the originator of the GIF said, okay? We have it now. So anyway, of a little video snippet of a crying cheerleader. All you have to do, after you've played the refs already, by reporting simply the term Vichy collaborator as bullying and harassment, after they, meaning the deplorables, have called you every homophobic slur in the book, with commie socialist and effing commie socialist and the most vile graphics, video and photographic graphics. All those got reported. Facebook said it did not violate their terms, but somehow Vichy collaborator was considered to be bullying and harassment. So that warranted, just about 60-some-odd days of, even more than that. That would have been 60, 75. Yeah, about 75, 80 days since Thanksgiving that I'd been suspended because of Vichy collaborator. Now I've gotten another, as you know, a 30-day suspension from Facebook because someone reported a sarcastic comment about white tears over losing Aunt Jemima and how these commie socialists are taking away our way of life to be able to subjugate the peoples that we've subjugated. And that was called sexual conduct and nudity. And that's not allowed. Well, no shit, Sherlock. But that's not nudity and that's not sexual conduct. That is a political statement about white tears over appropriation of another person's culture. And then lying about it. But that got me suspended, and there's no humans to talk to. Every human that has seen this graphic that I posted says, where's the nudity? I know, where is it? Because this one Trump pret, deplorable brown shirt, patriot USSR, I should say, little mofo, turned it in, and because the refs have been played over the Vichy collaborator harassment bullying claims, apparently the algorithm says, this guy's already been suspended. So whatever is said against him must be true. Well, the original reporting of Vichy collaborator was not bullying. It was response to bullying. And calling someone a Vichy collaborator is not being a bully, is telling the truth. Calling me a homophobic slur and a commie socialist is not the truth. Jeez, I mean, I have investments. That makes me a capitalist. Jeez, I wish people would wake up. Wow. But I better not tell them, because apparently, according to them, liberals are not allowed to have money. It would be hypocritical. Where did you ever get that? But I hear it all the time. I do. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Well, Barr's micromanaging of the GOJ might be out of proportion, but his micromanaging of all Trump-tied cases is totally off the hook. Totally. On the rest of the menu, Trump wants federal hiring to focus on skills rather than degrees, since he only went to an education-themed school himself. Yeah, not really an education, just education-themed. The Trump administration wants to end congressional review of arms sales because of the horrible way Congress acted when the Sauds dismembered Jamal Khashoggi. And a world-leading virus expert ousted from his job battling COVID-19 has alleged the Trump administration intensified its campaign to punish him for revealing shortcomings of the U.S. response. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Russia quit a UN arrangement to protect hospitals and humanitarian aid deliveries from being hit by warring parties after the UN busted Russia and Syria for bombing hospitals and humanitarian aid deliveries. And a graft probe of the Brazilian president's son was moved to a special court, opening the door to dump evidence uncovered so far. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the rightish of the page is our chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln, who will monitor so much better when she gets her laptop out of the repair shop. And so thank you, Kelly, for everything that you do. To the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon page. And do please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. Those who have done so have helped us pay our bills, fly under the radar, and resist for almost 10 years now. Resistance Radio, broadcasting 24/7, 365, as the founders originally intended. So many eons ago, indeed, even probably before the Magna Carta. So if you could afford an espresso-type coffee drink, send those funds our way. We will stretch those dollars. We will pay our bills. We will purchase the newish machinery and software, the attendant software needed for the newish machinery. And we will resist as we've been resisting in our indelible way. So thank you for allowing us to fulfill our civic duty. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. And thank you, Tom. I, of course, take care of at Justice Putnam, and I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime, and then put that up on social media, in which Twitter is one. Of course, I won't be able to put it up on our Netroots Radio Facebook page. Kelly will do that for us until Facebook says, wait, what is happening here? Yeah. Okay. That's how Facebook works. You know what? Today would be a good day to break up Facebook. I think it would be a good day. If you would like to follow the show on Twitter, do so at Cookbook West, and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., 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 etc. I'm telling you, if you look up for podcasts on etc., that's the only place you won't find it. But you'll find it everywhere else. Indeed. All right, let's jump. Hey, Barbara Lee wants to defund the Pentagon. So I say, Barbara Lee defunds for me. And she has. Even before 9/11. Look it up. All right, this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is out of the Associated Press by, Darlene Superville. So Trump wants to put an emphasis on federal hiring, wants the emphasis to be on skills rather than degrees, because obviously, if you have a college degree in something, you might be an expert. And every know-nothing knows that experts don't know anything. Only a know-nothing knows anything. Ask a know-nothing. They know it all. Ask them. Trump is set to sign an executive order today outlining a new direction for the nation's largest employer, meaning the government, during a meeting of the board that advises the administration on worker policy. Ivanka Trump, that hard worker, boy, she gets her nails dirty, doesn't she? Oh, wow. The president's daughter and advisor, really? Do we know that or do we not know that? Is co-chair of the American Workforce Policy Advisory Board and has worked on improving job training to meet employers' changing needs. Yeah, don't go to college. Dig a ditch. You know what? I always thought if you're going to dig a ditch, you might as well get a college degree so you can discuss Descartes with your fellow ditch diggers. The federal government is the nation's largest employer with 2.1 million civilian workers, not counting the Postal Service. Ivanka Trump predicted the change in federal government hiring would create a more inclusive and talented workforce like they've shown in the White House with their talented and creative workforce. We are modernizing federal hiring to find candidates with the relevant competencies and knowledge rather than simply recruiting based on degree requirements. Oh, you mean anybody who's gone through the rigors of academe and prove that they know what they know, doesn't know anything but a know-nothing like you knows everything. Now, I'm not saying that ditch diggers don't know anything. We need ditch diggers. But what they're talking about is not hiring a bunch of ditch diggers to attend to infrastructure. What they're talking about is getting rid of any experts who might have rational thinking skills, critical thinking skills, that would preclude them from utmost undying loyalty to Donald Trump. Patricia Zengurley of Reuters brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. Trump's administration is considering ending a long-standing system for congressional review of foreign weapon sales, congressional aides said, a plan that would face stiff opposition from his fellow Republicans as well as Democrats, and that's the Democratic Party, not Krats, please. For 4 decades, leaders of the Senate Foreign Relations and House of Representatives Foreign Affairs Committees have had the right to review and block weapons sales under an informal review process. The White House, frustrated in delays in sales to Saudi Arabia in particular, is considering whether to end that process, although it has not made a final decision. Really, they have. The administration's discussions were first reported by Foreign Policy. Now that is a great website and magazine. There is a fear that has existed for quite a long time that the administration would end this, one aide told Reuters. Congressional aide said ending the review process was opposed by members of both parties in both the Republican-led Senate and the Democratic-led House of Representatives. The White House did not respond to a request for comment because they're a bunch of fascists. And they like to get out in front of the story. Really? They do? A year ago, Trump infuriated lawmakers by declaring a national emergency in order to complete $8 billion in military sales to Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states. Members of Congress had delayed sales of military equipment to the region, angry about the war in Yemen, as well as rights abuses like the murder of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi at a Saudi consulate that happened to be in Turkey. Military aid was also integral to Trump's impeachment last year, which centered on whether he had held up such aid to Ukraine to exert political pressure on its government. Senator Bob Menendez, the top foreign relations Democrat, has placed holds on sales to Saudi Arabia, citing rights concerns. The American public has a right to insist that the sales of U.S. weapons to foreign governments are consistent with U.S. values and national security objectives. Consequently, the Congress is charged with exercising effective oversight of such sales, Menendez said. Well, I would presume that the White House could just come back and say these are consistent with U.S. values and national security objectives, since Donald Trump is selling out the United States to hostile foreign powers. Ricardo Alonso Zaldivar of the AP brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A government whistleblower ousted from a leading role in battling COVID-19 alleged that the Trump administration has intensified its campaign to punish him for revealing shortcomings in the U.S. response. Dr. Rick Bright, former director of the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, said in an amended complaint filed with a federal watchdog agency that he has been relegated to a lesser role in his new assignment at the National Institutes of Health, unable to lend his full expertise to the battle against COVID-19. The complaint also said that Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar is leading a coordinated effort to undermine Bright in his new duties, and that that has led to former colleagues shunning the sidelined scientist. The pressure is coming straight from the top, the complaint said, with Donald Trump calling Bright, quote, an angry, disgruntled employee, and setting the tone for a campaign of public disparagement to unnerve and intimidate him. Bright, a leading vaccine expert, was supposed to be working on virus diagnostic tests in his new job at NIH, but he is cut off from all vaccine work, cut off from all therapeutic work, and has a very limited role in the diagnostic work, said the complaint. His extremely narrow role is confined to making contracts with diagnostic companies that have already developed diagnostics to scale up their production. Where Bright previously oversaw 200 or more projects at BARDA, He has now been given responsibility for about 5 to 8 projects involving diagnostic tests already approved by the FDA. The complaint said former colleagues of Bright's at his old agency are now avoiding him. It described a conversation in which one such colleague, who was not identified by name. The former colleague is quoted as saying that the agency's new acting director, Dr. Gary Disbrow, had warned him to, quote, be very careful about dealing with Bright. The complaint said Disbrow had explained that Azar was very angry with Dr. Bright and that he was on the warpath. Disbrow explained that Secretary Azar directed HHS employees to refrain from doing anything that would help Dr. Bright be successful in his new role. Disbrow also said that, quote, Secretary Azar said that if anyone were to help Dr. Bright be successful, there would be hell to pay, the complaint said. HHS released a statement attributed to Disbrow, saying, I did not make any of these statements, and Secretary Azar has never spoken to me in the manner alleged. I have also never instructed any BARDA employee not to talk to Rick. In fact, I had a conversation with him yesterday about how to collaborate. I'm confused by these untrue statements and allegations, which distract from the important work we are doing in response to the coronavirus. The important work of opening everybody up and taking out the testing sites? Are you kidding me? Well, Dr. Bright's lawyers, Deborah Katz and Lisa Banks, responded that he stands by his allegations in the complaint. The lawyers say Bright's early warnings about coronavirus have been proved right, and the failure of the administration to heed those warnings has had a catastrophic effect on this country. The Office of Special Counsel, an agency that investigates complaints from government whistleblowers, previously found reasonable grounds that Bright was punished after trying to warn the White House and HHS early this year that the nation was unprepared for the coronavirus outbreak. Now, let's just remember Dr. Bright is a flu and infectious disease expert with over 10 years at the Biomedical Agency. His particular focus was on vaccine development. At NIH, he was supposed to be working on coronavirus testing, but he is now alleging that he has been sidelined. The agency that Bright had led is a unit of HHS that focuses on countermeasures to infectious diseases and bioterrorism. Bright had received a job performance review of outstanding before he was summarily transferred in April with his agency email cut off without warning. Well, let's get to our break now. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook at Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, Parts of Darkness. Spike Lee's The Five Bloods is a film about confronting past conflicts and traumas, personal pasts, racial pasts, nations' pasts, so it's appropriate, I hope, to look at the film's artistic and production pasts. So when Lee made Black Klansman, it was based on a script by two white writing partners who found Ron Stallworth's memoir, adapted it to a screenplay, and approached Jordan Peele. Peele, after Get Out, was hot enough to connect these guys with Spike Lee, who put his spin on the flick with his writing partner since Chirac, Kevin Willmott. Thus, Black Klansman. Lee's latest film, The Five Bloods, has a story that's a little more involved. Danny Bilson and Paul DeMeo were two European-American friends and writing partners. They did Disney's Rocketeer in '91, but they'd always wanted to do a Vietnam War film, partly because their old screenwriting teacher was John Milius, who wrote Apocalypse Now. So they wrote this script, very Milius-influenced, about four vets, 3 European-Americans and 1 African-American, who returned to Vietnam to find the remains of a fallen comrade and to get a hidden cache of gold. Originally, DeMeo and Bilson had hooked Oliver Stone to shoot their script. One of their producers suggested a more Treasure of the Sierra Madre vibe with the gold, and so the script shifted that way. Then Stone dropped out. Our boys eventually hooked Lee, who reworked the script with Kevin Wilmot, to being about 4 vets and 1 vet's son, all of them African American, because Lee and Wilmot knew what a lot of people don't talk about, that Vietnam was America's Black War, the first U.S. war to have desegregated combat, the first war where the percentage of enlisted blacks was higher than the percentage of blacks in the U.S. population. This background is important because it explains, at least to me, the cool pieces in front of me that didn't quite gel. Still, The Five Bloods is a great idea, it needed to be done, and Spike Lee was the one to do it. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Julia Rosen.
Bye, buddy. Hope you find your dad.
Thanks, Mr. Narwhal.
In real life, narwhals don't speak English, like the one bidding farewell to Will Ferrell's character in the movie Elf. Instead, they sound more like this. That's an audio clip recorded by scientists last summer under the icy waters of northwest Greenland.
If we want to describe what animals are doing, we first better understand what sounds are telling us.
Yevgeny Podolsky, a geophysicist at Hokkaido University in Japan. Podolsky and his colleagues study the soundscape of glacial fjords. They're noisy places where icebergs crash into the ocean and air bubbles fizz out of melting ice. These fjords are also home to narwhals. The animals are sometimes called unicorns of the sea because of their single, long, spiraled tusk, and they're shy, which makes them hard to study. So Podolsky teamed up with local Inuit hunters who snuck up on narwhals in kayaks and captured audio. That's the sound of a narwhal looking for food using echolocation, like a dolphin or a bat. And that's a narwhal closing in on its prey, which it vacuums up into its toothless mouth.
So it starts sounding like, to my ear, like a chainsaw or something like. So it's so many little clicks that we cannot even distinguish them. And this is recognized as a foraging-related sound used also by other animals. For example, other dolphinoids or bats, they do the same trick because when they approach the target, the prey, which is for narwhals, Arctic cod or Greenland halibut, they want to update their knowledge about the position of the target more frequently because the target is moving and they need to suck it in. And that's why this interval is getting shorter. And we even, by using some simple assumptions and equation, can know how far the animal is from the target.
The whistles you heard earlier are thought to be social calls, individuals communicating with other narwhals. The researchers reported these observations in the Journal of Geophysical Research, Oceans.
There are still sounds which we don't know what do they mean, and there are several like this.
Podolsky says that listening to narwhals is a first step toward understanding this mysterious whale and how it will cope as climate change, shipping, and other human activities alter its Arctic home.
There are all these things taking place right now in the region which will affect somehow these animals, but we have no clue even about the state or the previous state of these animals. So if we want to learn what's going to happen, we better start now. And I hope this is where sound monitoring can help us to learn more about these still mysterious creatures.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Julia Rosen.
This is a message from CDC.
After hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods, standing water and excess moisture help mold grow in your home, garage, and other structures. When you return to a home that has been flooded, know that you're likely to have mold. Mold puts your family's health at risk. If you have mold growing in your home, you should clean it up and fix other water problems, such as leaks in roofs, walls, or plumbing. Keep your children and pets out of affected areas until you've cleaned. Control moisture in your home to prevent mold growth. To remove mold growth from hard surfaces, use commercial products, soap and water, or a bleach solution of no more than 1 cup of household laundry bleach in 1 gallon of water. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. Never mix bleach with ammonia or other household cleaners. It will produce dangerous, toxic fumes. Open windows and doors to provide fresh air.
For more information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
I'm probably okay to have one more drink before I drive home. I'm probably okay. I open the window to stay alert. Probably okay. I just popped some gum in my mouth.
Step out of the car, please.
I probably made a mistake.
Probably okay isn't okay when it comes to drinking and driving. If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
It's more than a vote.
I'm Floyd Patterson II, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute with Bill Newman.
More Than a Vote is the name of the organization, just founded by National Basketball Association superstar LeBron James and other prominent black athletes and entertainers. The purpose of More Than a Vote is to protect African American voting rights, to inspire African Americans to register and to vote, and to combat voter suppression, which we should note is rampant in the United States today and pernicious and potentially fatal to democracy. More Than a Vote is a 501c4 organization, so generally it can't back any specific candidate. But potentially on a large scale, it can teach people how to fight back when governments, state and local government officials, and private organizations try to prevent people from voting. The murder of George Floyd motivated LeBron James and his cohorts to undertake this effort. As Phoenix Mercury guard Skylar Diggins Smith said, "I'm sick of seeing unarmed black men killed by the police. I want to put some action behind the frustration, the anger, and the helplessness I've been feeling." And LeBron James said, "It's time for us to make a difference." Indeed, helping to secure the right to vote, theoretically guaranteed by the United States Constitution, could make an enormous difference. That would be a victory worth savoring.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the American Civil Liberties Union, because freedom can't defend itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1893. That was the day that Illinois Governor John Peter Altgeld pardoned Samuel Fielden, Oscar Neebe, and Michael Schwab, who were imprisoned for their alleged role in the Haymarket bombing of 1886. 8 men had been accused of throwing a bomb at a workers' rally in Chicago. 4 were hung. 1 died in prison before he could be executed, and 3 were incarcerated. Governor Altgeld had been born in Germany. He was a progressive leader who helped pass worker safety laws and child labor laws. Efforts to free the 3 Haymarket prisoners had been underway since their sentencing. During the trial, there was no physical evidence linking any of the accused men to the crime. Governor Altgeld agreed to look into the case. He issued a report outlining his findings. At the end, he concluded, quote, "The trial was not fair." He wrote, quote, "I'm convinced that it is clearly my duty to act. I grant an absolute pardon to Samuel Fielden, Oscar Neebe, and Michael Schwab this 26th day of June, 1893. This pardon came just 1 day after a monument to the martyrs was dedicated at the cemetery where the 5 martyrs were buried. Today, part of Governor Altgeld's pardon is inscribed on a plaque on the backside of that monument. Governor Altgeld paid a political price for the pardon. He was attacked by the press. The Chicago Tribune attacked his German heritage, declaring there was, quote, "not a drop of true American blood in his veins. He does not reason like an American, does not feel like one, and consequently does not behave like one." In 1896, he lost his bid at re-election for standing up for justice. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
I read the news today, oh boy. time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
The CDC on Thursday announced that the actual number of COVID-19 infections could be 10 times higher than the 2.4 million known cases. Merrill Brown is founder and CEO of the News Project. He pointed out that this message was delivered in an hour-long phone briefing with reporters. He tweeted in response, "News that 20 million people may have the virus merits a nationally televised White House briefing, not a call." And he called it a, quote, informational tragedy. Even without multiplying the number by 10, the U.S. still reported nearly 40,000 new coronavirus cases on Thursday. Texas Governor Greg Abbott, one of the first to ease lockdown restrictions, has finally seen the light and reportedly paused their reopening. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said that he will not move to the next phase of the state's planned reopening. On Wednesday and Thursday, Florida reported more than 10,000 new cases, bringing its total to more than 114,000. And on Friday morning, the U.S. death toll from COVID-19 was approaching 125,000 people dead. Now on to the Supreme Court. With 14 cases still left to be announced before the end of the month, which comes Tuesday, the Supreme Court on Monday handed down only one decision, a 7-2 ruling that migrants seeking asylum in the United States have no right to appeal deportation orders in federal court if their applications are denied. That leaves 13 more opinions to be announced. Those are now expected Monday and Tuesday, both beginning at 10 a.m. Eastern. Speaking of the Supreme Court, the Trump administration filed a brief very, very late Thursday night, a motion asking the court to void or invalidate the complete Affordable Care Act. Yeah, Obamacare. This stunning move comes on the day that coronavirus cases hit yet another all-time high for the second day in a row. In his filing, Solicitor General Noel Francisco said that once the law's individual coverage mandate and two key provisions are invalidated, the remainder of the Affordable Care Act should not be allowed to remain in effect. Now, if any of your Trump or family members need proof that the president is a liar, here he is in Tulsa just last week promising to protect what he's actively trying to take away.
We will protect Medicare and Social Security for our great seniors, and will always protect patients with pre-existing conditions. Always. Always.
And yes, the brief includes a section pointedly arguing that the Affordable Care Act's pre-existing condition rules must be overturned as well. The House of Representatives on Thursday passed the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act of 2020, a sweeping police reform bill that would ban chokeholds, end the use of no-knock warrants, create a national registry for officers accused of misconduct, and make it easier to prosecute police officers. Yet Democrats only picked up 3 Republican votes: Will Hurd of Texas, Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania, and Fred Upton of Michigan. And Mitch McConnell already said the Senate will not take it up. For their part, the White House spent much of the day Thursday on Capitol Hill trying to convince Republicans to vote against the House Democrats' bill. Judge Peter Kelly of the Queens County Surrogate Court in New York on Thursday dismissed a bid by Donald Trump's younger brother, Robert, to block publication of a tell-all book by Trump's niece, Mary Trump. The judge said he didn't have jurisdiction over the dispute. Ted Boutros, the renowned First Amendment lawyer who's representing Mary Trump, called the attempt to squelch the book baseless and said no court, quote, has the authority to violate the Constitution by imposing a prior restraint on core political speech. Robert Trump's attorney, Charles Harder, said the request to block the book was due to a confidentiality agreement Mary Trump signed and that he'd file a new lawsuit in a different court. Good luck with that. And from the propaganda files, Sean Hannity traveled with Donald Trump to Green Bay, Wisconsin for a Fox News town hall. One of the questions was the softball you'd expect an incumbent president running for re-election would be asked and have a good answer prepared. Well, Hannity's question was, what's at stake in this election as you compare and contrast, and what are your top priority items for a second term? And here's how Donald Trump answered.
Well, one of the things that will be really great, you know, the word experience is still good. I always say talent is more important than experience. I've always said that. But the word experience is a very important word. It's a very important meaning. I never did this before. I never slept over in Washington. I was in Washington, I think, 17 times. All of a sudden, I'm president of the United States. You know the story. I'm riding down Pennsylvania Avenue with our First Lady, and I say, this is great. But I didn't know very many people in Washington. It wasn't my thing. I was from Manhattan, from New York. Now I know everybody. And I have great people in the administration. You make some mistakes, like, an idiot like Bolton. All he wanted to do is drop bombs on everybody. You don't have to drop bombs on everybody. You don't have to kill people.
Got it? Good. Now vote.
I got good news.
And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is fully listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Please check out NicoleSandler.com, and while you're there, please click on that donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We always begin, weather from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 61 degrees Fahrenheit, nearly the same temperature as yesterday and mid-90s. While plentiful sunshine, highs, of course, near 95, and winds will be out of the north-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Overnight lows in the, tonight, overnight low will be in the, low 60s. Clear to partly cloudy, winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Tomorrow we should only, in the low to mid-80s because we'll have partly cloudy skies, winds out of the northwest. North-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And Sunday, it looks like we should be in the low to mid-70s because of partly cloudy conditions. And those partly cloudy conditions should last until Wednesday, in which our temperatures should not be, should be between mid-70s and low 80s. So we'll see how that works. Confirmed coronavirus cases in Jackson County of Southern Oregon has been reduced by 1 to 93 after a massive spike. But I expect that 93 to go back up to 94. They're kind of doing this here. They'll say, there's some other underlying conditions. We're not quite sure if it's COVID. Yeah, that's right. Underlying conditions will be caused by COVID, or at least exacerbate them. So keep that in mind. Grass pollen has gone up to very high again, right outside the mothership's windows. The air quality index is in the good range at 33 parts per million, and that daytime UV index also remains very high at 9. Do take care. Barometric pressure is rising at 29.98 inches. Visibility is at 10 miles. And relative humidity in the region is at 71%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Indeed, it's called Citizen Weather People. Weather People. Okay, London. The fellow or gal in London is recording 85 degrees and sunny. The folks in Paris are recording 88 and sunny with a heat advisory. Get out of Paris. No one stays in Paris when it's that hot. Get to the coast. Rome is 87 and sunny. Kyiv is 84 and fair. Kabul is 81 and fair. Tokyo is 81 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 80 degrees and fair with a heat advisory of their own. Sydney, Australia is 55 and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 58 and cloudy with a fog advisory, which is what happens this time of year. And New York is 80 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. And these people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Michelle Nichols and Tom Perry of Reuters bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Russia said it has quit a voluntary United Nations arrangement that aimed to protect hospitals and humanitarian aid deliveries in Syria from being hit by warring parties. Russia made the decision following an internal UN inquiry in April that found it was highly probable the Syrian government or its allies like Russia carried out attacks on 3 healthcare facilities, a school, and a refuge for children in northwest Syria last year. Russian UN Ambassador Vasily Nebenzia accused various opposition groups and terrorists through their proxies of abusing the humanitarian deconfliction process. Russia believed the United Nations should give any relevant information to Syrian authorities, he said. We do not see withdrawal as a threat to humanitarian workers on the ground if information provided is accurate and trustworthy. Russia has provided military support to Syrian President Bashar al-Assad in the civil war which erupted after Assad cracked down on pro-democracy demonstrators in 2011. Russia and Syria have said their forces are not targeting civilians or civilian infrastructure and have long questioned the sources used by the UN to verify attacks. Well, it should be noted that the UN actually found out that Russia and Syria were using the information about the facilities not to hit as a roadmap to bomb hospitals and kill humanitarian aid workers.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Rodrigo Villa-Jair of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Brazil's corruption investigation targeting Jair Bolsonaro's eldest son will move to a special Rio de Janeiro court, the state court said yesterday Thursday, opening the door to efforts to throw out evidence in the trial. Senator Flavio Bolsonaro was a state legislator at the time the crime was committed and thus should have immunity from trial by a lower court judge, the court said. The court voted 2-1 to take the case away from lower court judge Flavio Itabina, who last week ordered the arrest of the senator's former aide. Fabricio Queiroz, the aide, was sought for questioning after about $230,000 in bank transactions in an alleged scheme to embezzle the salaries of phantom employees in the Rio State Assembly. Queiroz had disappeared from public view until police detained him last week at a house owned by the Bolsonaro family lawyer outside of Sao Paulo. Now, Bolsonaro's son has denied any wrongdoing and called the investigation a political attack on his family. Now, before becoming president, Bolsonaro represented the state as a federal lawmaker for nearly 3 decades, and that's about 3 decades worth of corruption. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week. But you do know that Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we're going to meet up on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. So stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day, all night, and all weekend for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver.